actually, so that's another major theme that comes up is accountability. And you know, that's another big thing that's coming up in the general community is people being accountable for themselves. So how is the accountability just basically you know, taking ownership of the shadow, or acknowledging the fear, or like how does accountability fit in with this process?
I use the term personal responsibility, the same as accountability. As soon as I blame something else or someone else for where I am in my life, I give away my power. Now, without power, I don't have the energy to break out of this entrapment. So we are trained to blame others. We see advertisements on TV. If you feel you've been a victim of a car accident, call this legal firm. We've been brainwashed to give our power away, to not take personal responsibility. So it's a very strong theme around that. When I stop blaming other people for my failed relationship, for my inner crisis, for waiting 35 years before I came out as a gay man because I was too terrified of what the repercussions may have been, for the lousy boss I've got, for that darn cop who just jumped out of the bushes and gave me a speeding fine. How dare he do that? No, I was the one speeding. It's called karma.
Yeah.
And the more we build energy around us, the faster karma works, which means we can burn off the stuff we no longer need. So the paradox is, the more I do my work, the harder it becomes, but also the more rewarding it becomes.
So this brings me to another topic that, you know, it's a very touchy subject, especially in the gay queer community, is the microaggressions and you know, prejudice. So as someone, if someone is in a minority community and they are declaring their victimhood as being attacked for being a minority, is that just them giving away power?
To me, it's a start of declaring who they are, a start of being proud of who they are. It's a start of what I call not giving a damn about what other people think about you. So that's a way of starting to take back your power. It's a start of all those things. It's taking you from this place of fear by standing up and going across, taking courage and saying, I'm going to join the Pride March or the Women's Me Too movement, whatever it might be, and take courage to say, I'm going to become independent and liberated from society's expectations of how I should behave as a gay man or a person of color or whatever. But it's not taking us out. It's taking us horizontal, it's not taking us vertical necessarily. As I say, it's when we do both work, the courage and the inner work, to find that sense of purpose, that we find freedom, not just in one or the other. If we do just the fear-based work and courage, we end up in quadrant 4, and the emotions there are insensitivity, selfishness, greed, and ego. And we see that in a lot of minority communities. They create their tribe. That's another expression of self, of ego. It's not actually, I don't believe it's helping them as their inner journey. It's done one part but not the other part. Likewise, if we just do work around integrating with self, we end up in that place of the activist. The activist sits up here in frustration.
So it's a tricky place to be, where you want to be fully accountable for yourself and to have that strong sense of self and saying, I don't need your acceptance, while also standing up for your basic human rights. So it's like being a warrior but not being angry about it.
Yeah. So
and we don't really see much of that. We see usually just a lot of anger, in my opinion.
We see a lot of anger, and anger to me, can be a very positive emotion. Because anger, the energy of anger, I don't like to judge anger at all, but rather use it constructively. Anger projected outwardly can be very destructive, and we're seeing that. But anger taken inwardly can burn the fire within and create that sense of resilience within, so we can break through. Again, in the Chinese medicine wheel, in that 5-element cycle, anger feeds and fuels love, happiness, and joy. Now think about that. And we won't go into the model too much here, but fear controls joy and happiness. Fear feeds anger. Okay? So when I stopped being afraid of being in the shadows as a gay man, I came out and I became the activist around that. I became angry for all the suppressed years. The Me Too movement, we're seeing women who are stepping up into their power. They're becoming resentful that they were suppressed all this time. That's a natural and healthy emotion. But if we stay in any single emotion, where it becomes destructive. So we take that anger, because anger in that same model controls and limits the ability to show empathy and sympathy. So the gay community, as in any minority community, need to guard against that. So they're being detached from the rest of the world. But at the same time, that anger, when it's internalized and processed is an important word. Internalized just, I believe, turns to cancers. But once it's processed, it then breaks out to joy and happiness. And so we use that anger. In the US, we're seeing a combination of fear. Fear, of course, is fueled by guilt. So we're seeing guilt being very much the bottom down here, meaninglessness, separation, church-based manipulation, very guilt-based. We're seeing people rebelling against that and resenting that. Guilt controls anger. And we'll have another conversation around that model alone. But we're in a cycle, we're in a space where there's guilt-based stuff, especially younger generation are not buying it anymore, saying, no, I don't buy this. The fear of repercussion, or what does it mean? You know what, I'm going to have courage and step out of that fear. When I do that, I'm going to become the activist. We're seeing that a lot of young people becoming activists, which is great, and the frustration that comes with that. And then once they break through that, they'll find a place in the space of inner peace and become what I call the ambassador. We become the light bearer, or the Mahatma Gandhi of the person. Be the change you wish to see in the world. That's when you find that inner peace. Doesn't mean to say you become a complete hermit and pacifist, but you hold the light for others to also recognize they too go to that place, and they too can build that light, and they too can break through all this stuff.
So that position, you'd say, is like when someone becomes a man or becomes a woman, and not to get into the gender stuff, which I do want to talk about later, but as opposed to the man-child or the woman-child. So that's a matter of taking responsibility, coming out of just being older but stuck.
So the man-child or woman-child sits down here, and I use him because he's a wonderful example, not because of any judgment, but our president today. And so Mr. Trump, he is a complete non-conformist, utterly. He couldn't be more across the other side if you tried. So he does not buy into any of these conformist type models. But sitting over here, I don't believe, from what I see, he's done much inner work on himself. Everything is around materialism, nothing around spiritualism. So he's stuck in a place of what I call ego, greed, selfishness, and insensitivity. Now, that is the place of the man-child still. The man-child or woman-child blames everything and everyone around them for why things can't work out in their lives. And we see this in our president today. But the president, I say, is just a symptom of the country. Whilst he's a great example to use, he's not alone. We collectively dreamt him into being. We collectively manifested him so we can take responsibility for our own inner work. So we stop saying, how on earth did we get this man there? Well, guess what? We dreamt him into being. We brought him into there. Why did we do that? So he can bring a light into our own shadow self. So he can teach us to take responsibility for who we are. And how does that physically manifest? It manifests by taking responsibility for being a citizen of a country with the privilege of voting paying attention to what's happening in politics, because politics, whether you like it or not, are the ones who set where you find yourself locked in, and then making a decision. Until you do that, you remain the man-child or woman-child, until you take a civic responsibility and duty to step up and take responsibility for your own decision processes.
So whether or not you voted for Trump or you voted at all, everyone kind of voted for Trump?
He's a collective dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, and whilst I did not vote for him, I've dreamt into being. He's helping me accelerate myself as a healer immensely. He's forcing me to look at areas which I haven't looked at in myself. Not to judge him, but to judge myself. And once I stop judging him, I see him as a teacher, not as all the other adjectives people apply to him.
So along those lines, and I think that this would be kind of tricky for a lot of people, is to get away from blaming Trump for all the things that he's doing. What do you recommend? Like, what would be the first step into taking responsibility for oneself, as opposed to, I mean, destroying the EPA and changing all the rules and taking, trying to take away people's rights? It's hard to say, how is that my fault?
It's only your fault because you allow it to be your fault. Okay? What do I mean by that? It's because by saying fault, we're into judgment again. So how do we get out of judgment and become what I call that place of discernment or genuine curiosity? Saying, okay, I'm finding myself in the now. There's no point whinging about the past, but in the now, as Eckhart Tolle remind us all the time, I'm in the place of now. I'm finding myself here. What does it mean to me at a personal level, and what does it mean to me at a collective level and a planetary level? What can I do about that? Because if you go back to the core principle, especially around the law of attraction and I've gone blank, our books anyway, they say there is no separation. Separation is an illusion. We're all one. There is no Donald Trump out there. There is no EPA out there. It's all in here. And that's a hard one to swallow, because that really challenges me personally to be responsible for my thoughts, my actions, and all my deeds. And if every single person did that, imagine what would happen. John Lennon sang about that a long time ago.
Right.
Imagine the world. Yeah, so that's the ultimate. And I think what we've got with our current day politics is what I call a quickening. We're accelerating the rate of opportunity we have for learning. We have a choice. We can either be overwhelmed and break down and cry and collapse in this quadrant 3, or we can say, no, I'm going to go to find a place of inner peace, become that inner warrior, which is not an aggressive place, but an assertive place. It's a place of personal responsibility, and I am going to act out of love, out of compassion, and out of joy. I'm going to act on that.
So, to go back a little bit, the microaggressions have come up as a topic recently, and as I understand it, a microaggression is when something that someone else does makes me feel attacked or uncomfortable. So, how do you, what's your opinion about that whole concept?
They're beautiful. As we say, and again, Carlos Castaneda is a great teacher around this, a teacher in Don Juan and so on. We call these micro-aggressors, as you call them, our petty tyrants, okay. Our teachers around us. And so we feel our buttons being pushed. We say, wow, what an opportunity for me to look back into myself, because all they are is a mirror held back to me or held back to you.
Yeah.
I can't make you feel uncomfortable unless you allow yourself to feel uncomfortable.
But it's kind of a big deal now, because companies like big companies, and Netflix comes to mind, they actually have corporate policy regarding microaggressions. Like you can be reprimanded or fired for microaggressing against someone, which basically means that I could do something unintentionally and then get fired for it because it made you feel uncomfortable. So it's gone beyond just suggesting people take responsibility, but actually like legitimately affecting someone's life.
Okay, we'll circle around to that.
Yeah.
Let's just back up one. We're in the Age of Aquarius now. We're in the matriarchal era. We've come out of the Piscean era. Piscean era is every 2,000 years, according to some astrologists with astrology, we go through what's called a precession. And we've come from the Piscean era from year 0 to 2000. We're in the Aquarian era now. Piscean era is dominant patriarchal control hierarchical systems. We're in the Aquarian era, which is a matriarchal era, which is around collaboration. It's around more heart-based, heartfelt. It's also, funnily enough, around technology to go together. So when you talk about Netflix, I don't know what the board of Netflix is made up of. I don't study them, but I'm just trying to feel through. And from what you're telling me, it would appear they're coming from a patriarchal, male-dominated kind of thinking, with I'm going to fire you for a transgression. Conformance and compliance, trying to manipulate the fear-based position. That is where the patriarchal world lives. That is where I believe we're seeing the death throes of that. We're seeing leadership in organizations and in politics and in countries clinging onto those positions. A patriarch. We're seeing Vladimir Putin.
A backward step.
I would say it's a stuck step.
Yeah.
They're not moving forward. They haven't gone anywhere.
So
People are moving on.
Kind of policy to force people in conformity is actually not helping.
No, and what's happening, especially younger people today, are feeling that's not where we are. I don't belong there. That's not who I am anymore. I've moved on. So when you got management or leadership at a political or organizational level holding people back, there's that tension creates. And again, we look at the word tension. It creates attention. It demands attention. So you give it attention. And the challenge is not to play victim in a role like that. You say, you know what, the culture of this organization actually does not serve me. I'm getting out. I'm not going to play victim.
Yeah.
We're seeing Amazon certainly are being challenged around this at the moment. Of course, one of the old institutions which having the hugest challenge is the Catholic Church, with its pedophilia and its sexual abuse claims against it. It's having massive challenges now, but organizations too having a challenge.
Well, but I mean, I do see the other side of that, which is like, for women to feel like they have opportunity in the workforce, it would seem like they legitimately would want to feel some level of protection in environments where, okay, maybe I don't conform to this, but now I can't find a job. Now no one will hire me because I'm standing up for myself.
No one will hire me in the same energy. Find an organization with a different energy. They are out there.
Okay.
I say to women, please don't try and become men.
Yeah.
Men have screwed up. Don't try and become us. Please teach us what it means to have collaboration, what it means to have nurturing, what it means to have compassion. Bring that into the workforce. That's all I can say. Please, in the corporate world, don't try and become men.
Yeah.
It's hard, but fortunately, we're in the Age of Aquarius. The collective energies are moving more to that feminine. Power is a female energy, strength a male energy. We're seeing, as we're moving more to the power world, men are struggling with that. Bullying is increasing or is being exposed more and more because that's a male way. Men, unless they do their work and connect directly within to get to the source of power, which is a spiritual energy, which women naturally, being female, can connect to. If men don't do that work, they will get that power from women. They'll suppress women, they'll bully women, they'll hold women down. When women feel bullied or threatened, they collapse and they give away their power. I say, women, don't do that.
Right.
Hold that space. There's plenty of laws now to protect you. Use those laws and don't let men bully you.
So, not all feminism, but there's a big part of feminism, I think, that is claiming that men and women are equal. And maybe equal or same, there's a little bit of tricky terminology, but it sounds like what you're saying is that men and women are completely separate. They're very different in the way that they approach life and problem solve?
What I'm saying is that male energy and female energy are quite different. We each embody both. Okay? The archetypal male was probably Adam. The archetypal female is probably Eve. They're storybook characters. You know, they don't exist. We embody a bit of everything. And I'm of the firm belief that the unity, when we return back to spirit, back to God, back to whatever it might be, is when we integrate the two, we become both male and female energy. And that's the work we have to do. So, like for you as a man, your work is to embrace the qualities of the divine feminine. Because when you embrace those qualities and you bring that up, naturally your sacred masculine increases. I've had clients where they've tried to suppress men, who've tried to suppress that divine feminine, believing that's going to suddenly turn them gay or make them gay, which is absolutely ridiculous. So they suppress that, and they want me to work with them in my therapeutic practice on the masculine only. I say, dude, you've been working on this for so long, it's not going to go anywhere. If you work on this, that's naturally going to go up, and you as a being will naturally move completely. So I urge men to do their inner work, to find that place, to find a place of compassion, find a place they can talk, find a place they can share, move from that third chakra predominant place into the fourth chakra, the heart center. Women recognize men are struggling with this. Honor that, hold the space for them. Mothers know how to do that, and let that grow.
So in that example of developing your own feminine so that your masculine gets stronger, you could also say that by attacking or suppressing your feminine is actually diminishing your masculinity.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. And you see what happens. We take some of these Hollywood executives, they've been attacking the feminine so much, and they've been, I'm going to use vampire-like, sucking energy out of them to feed that. This has now been removed by the courts, and they're sitting in prison or where they might be sitting. Because they've done no inner work to find their feminine, they collapse. And you watch those men, just look at them, and they become these shrunken beings. They've got no power to sustain them, because power is an inner thing. They haven't got that. So yeah, so if you don't do that work, that's what's going to happen.
So I'm going to change topics a little bit. What role do you feel like plant medicine has in personal development?
Okay, I'm not an expert at plant medicine at all. I've had a deep journey, however, in that Toltec teachings, which is around the teacher Don Juan and Castaneda, and my own teacher in South Africa, who was a clone of Don Juan for many years, that we would tap into what's called the ally energy, the energy of the plant world, the mineral world. Everything's living, everything has energy. We were taught it has a deep inner wisdom, but it's a wisdom which is different to our human-based wisdom. It has a slightly different vibrational frequency, not within the up and down of where we are to try and rise our vibrational frequency, but it's off to one side. And rocks at another side. When you actually see a rock looking at you, it's quite weird. Okay, but to become a tree or to become a shrub or to tap into that, it does stress the circuits because it's not my natural frequency. If I do my inner spiritual work, I'm actually increasing my vibrational frequency in this linear. But if I go using plant medicine, I'm using its vibrational frequency bands, if you want to call it that, and rising my frequency there. That can be really, really useful for helping us to identify and recognize there's more to what meets the eye than what we live in here. But I have been cautioned against becoming addicted to that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not the world we live in. It's not our world. Let me take it. We live in this world altogether, but it's not of our world. It's a different world. Use it wisely. Use it as a teacher, but do not give away your power to it, and have a very clear, use the word contract. When you go in there, agreement with plant medicine, we're going to do this, and when we're done, we're going to separate again. Because if we don't separate or have that agreement, the risk is we stay locked in there and we give away our power yet again, and we end up where we were before, well, even worse. So that's kind of I don't work in that space necessarily. I just have been taken there, but it's not the space where I belong.
Okay. So something you mentioned was addiction, and it's arguable, like certain mind-altering substances are addictive and some aren't. But then, it makes me wonder about just the bigger picture of if you're addicted to cigarettes, alcohol, sex, television, shopping, CrossFit, or whatever, what's really driving that? How do people kind of fall into that trap of addiction, and how would they get out of it?
Again, it's a huge question, but from my perspective or teachings I've been through, it's a way of avoidance of doing our inner work to reconnect with who we really are. I call it shiny object syndrome. It's so much easier to become addicted to something that's not to minimize the mental health issues around addiction, because a lot of addiction is fear-based and also separation in that quadrant, and we become addicted because the only thing that gives us meaning is looking at porn on the internet or something, whatever it might be, or taking drugs. So one doesn't go in a place of judgment and say whatever about that person, but say, okay, in that place of genuine curiosity, what is holding that person there? What is it doing for them, or what's it not doing for them, rather? And is it assisting them in their personal evolution, or is it holding them back? One may find that in a very sheltered, conservative, religious environment, which could be a Middle Eastern environment, could be a evangelical Christian environment, I don't know, that being exposed to pornography itself, like plant medicine, could break us away from the suppression. But the risk is we become addicted to it because it suddenly becomes so tasty and so interesting that we forget it's just purely a lever to break something so we can get on with our journey and come back onto our path. So I always caution people, use these things wisely, understand the purpose behind it. Going back to purpose up here. Don't judge it. If it calls, by all means answer the call, but really be very vigilant and have all your senses out, saying what is the call about and at what point has it served its purpose. And then say what next. Go into the stillness, go into the quietness, go into the now, because the addiction is quite the opposite of the now. If the mind is so busy, and say, what do I do next?
So as far as going into the now, it's something where in this world of bright lights and loud noises, how do you have any rituals or practices that keep you in the now?
Removing myself from other humanoids. Okay, in other words, finding place of solace, of stillness. And I don't need to go to the beach, for example. People need to do that. I don't need to hike in the mountains. Some people need to do that. I don't need to run in the forest. Some people need to do that. I don't need to swim in the pool or go to the gym. It doesn't matter what works for you. I'm comfortable in the meditation. I've been trained in that space. That works for me. So whatever practice takes you away from the incessant distractions and noise, opinions and thoughts of others, try and find that place. Again, people say, I can't meditate, I can't get the thoughts out of my mind. We don't try and get the thoughts out of our mind. What we try not to do is hold on to them. We allow them to come in, oh, another thought, off it goes. Gosh, another one, off it goes. Another one. Eventually it just becomes like a blur and like background noise, like the fountain behind us. we don't even notice them after a while. So meditation, they will just come and flow through so smoothly, we don't even notice them. Same as probably when you are doing physical exercise, whether it be running or swimming or surfing. After a while, you don't even notice anything around you, you just become one with it. And that's what I call meditation.
Okay.
And whatever practice works for you, honor that and develop it. Because I don't believe there's any one practice that suits all. Because some people are auditory, some are visual, some are kinesthetic, they're different learning